Welcome to March 2026 block of the month, and these are the 2 blocks that we will be working on. Let's get sewing on our block 1 for March, and the first thing we're going to do is to draw diagonal lines from corner to corner on 12 of our teal print and then 4 of our gingham print. And I'm just lining this up in the corner and drawing the line. I have all my pieces cut out here on the design board, and we can go ahead and start. So we're going to take a white square, it's gonna be hard to see on here, a white square, and then we're going to take our teal print, line that up exactly in the corners so that both sides line up, and then we're going to stitch right on that line, and then we're going to come back and add another one to the opposite side. So it'll be like this. All right. Okay, and then I'm just going to trim away the extra corner here, about a 1/4 inch away from my stitching line. And then we can press them back, and the first part is going to look like that. And then I'm going to do one more here. Okay, give that a finger press, and then we are going to finish these out by adding one more teal print to a side and then one of our gingham prints to the opposite side. So they will kind of look like that. Now we're going to sew our square into square units into a 4 patch, and so I'm just going to kind of lay them out how I want them to go, making sure that the gingham corner is in the 4 corners, and so it's going to kind of look like that. I'm going to sew those 2 together, these 2 together, and then join them as a 4 patch. there is a lot of bulk in there, so I'm going to go ahead and press those seams open. I think they're going to lay a little bit nicer. Okay, I pressed that seam open, and I'm just going to kind of line them up together and put a few pins in, just because when I press open, you don't have a seam that nests up against another one to kind of hold it in place. And so then I will do a few pins just to get it in the spot where I want it to end up. Okay. Okay, and that looks good. I am going to go ahead and give that a press. Okay, so we have our center section done, and I went ahead and pressed those seams where we joined them. I pressed those open, and now I'm going to work on kind of a top and bottom little border to build our block, and I'm going to be sewing a gingham square onto each side of this solid rectangle. And then I'm just going to finger press that towards the gingham. Okay, and then I'm going to add those onto our block. Okay, and just kind of do a little press back on that. That looks good. And then let's add this to the opposite side. Okay, and that's what that should look like. And so now I'm going to give that a press. Now we're going to add the last two sides on. So this is what it looks like. And I just pressed those towards the piece we just added. And for the last two edges, we are going to do a solid rectangle with two gingham squares added to each side of that, and then a solid square added to each of the gingham squares. Okay, that's stitched together, and I'm going to give that a good press. This is what the inside of our block looks like, and now we're going to add the borders just like we've done in all the previous months. I have already stitched my border sections together, so now I'm going to go ahead and just add those. And this is our finished block 1 for March. Now let's work on block 2. For March block 2, we're going to start off by making some half square triangles. So I am going to draw on the wrong side of 2 white squares, and I'm going to be pairing those with a teal print square. And then we're just going to sew on each side of that line to make some half square triangles. Okay, then I'm going to cut on that drawn line, and we're going to press that to the teal. So I'm going to give that a good press, and then we can trim them down. Now we're going to trim those half square triangles to 3.5 inches. And mine are pretty square, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim on 2 sides and then take that little dog ear off. And so then we have 4 half square triangles that are now 3.5 inches. Okay, so then I'm just going to set those to the side. And then next thing we're going to do is we're going to make some strip set units, because we're going to make little 9 patches, but since we have a lot to do that are the same, we're going to do a strip piecing method. And so I am going to start by sewing the smaller sections, 2 prints with a solid in the center, and then the last one is the longer section, and it has 2 solids on the outside and then the print fabric there in the middle. So we're going to go ahead and just sew those together. Okay, and on those I have really shortened my stitch length to just a real small stitch length, just because when we go through and we're going to cut these apart, we don't want those little ends to start popping apart and then our seams coming apart. So it does help to just lower that stitch length. And then on these, I'm going to go ahead and give it a press, and I'm going to press towards the print on each one of these strip sets. Now we're going to come back through and trim and cut up our strip piece sections there. And so the first thing I'm going to do is clean up one edge, and I just have a ruler that's bigger than my strip set, and I've made a nice clean cut there. Now I'm going to shift it, and I'm going to trim these to 1.5 inches. And so what I'll do is take a line on my ruler and line it up so it's going across that seam there, and then I've got my 1.5 inch line here, and then I can cut that apart, and then I'm going to make 8 of those units, and I'm just going to keep trimming in that same way. And if I happen to get a little bit of a crooked cut or my ruler slips a little bit, I have enough that I can go ahead and clean up an edge again. Okay, and then that piece we can just discard. So we have 8 of those units. And then this strip, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do a cleanup cut so that we have a nice straight edge to start with. And then we're gonna go ahead and trim those to 1.5 inches as well. And we just need 4 of those. Okay, we can discard that piece. And now we're going to sew them into little 9 patches. And so we're going to take 2 of the pieces that have the solid on the outer edges, and we're going to put a piece that has the print sections on both sides in the middle, and then we'll just join those rows together. Okay, and then we're going to have a little 9 patch that looks like this. And then we can press those either the seams to one side or press them open, whatever you prefer. But we're going to make 4 of these total. Now I've pressed those and we have all of our units ready to turn into our block. So I'm going to refer to my pattern and just kind of place that where I can see it. And then we're going to line up our units into rows. And we'll just go ahead and just making sure everything is oriented correctly. So row 1 looks like that. Row 2, we're going to pop in some of our half square triangles there. Okay, so we've got it all laid out, and I'm just checking to make sure that mainly that I have my my little 9 patches lined up so that the solids are in the outer corners, and then just double checking the pinwheel on the middle section to make sure they are all facing the right way. Okay, and then we're just going to sew rows together, and then we'll join the rows. Okay, I've pressed my rows. On the top row, I pressed all my seams going to the right, and then the next row, I pressed everything going to the left, the third row to the right, the fourth row to the left, and then that way when I put them together, those seams will nest. But you can choose to press them open or whatever works best for you. But now I've got my rows laid out, and I'm just going to double check everything again to make sure I have it oriented correctly. And then I'm just going to pick up the first two and sew those together. And now I'm going to sew the bottom two together. Okay, and I will give those a press before joining those two. Okay, I've pressed those two, and now I'm going to join them together. Okay, I'm going to give that a press, and then this is the inside of our block, and then it's ready to add the borders to it, and we're just going to do that the same way that we've done to all of our blocks. And then this is our finished block 2 for this month. Thanks for watching.